You meet someone, the chemistry is great. Then slowly the little dismissals start. The broken promises, the subtle put-downs, the excuses. You try to talk about it and suddenly you're the problem. You're too sensitive or bringing up the past, or you're just misunderstanding. You leave the interaction feeling confused, hurt, and most of the time deeply exhausted. Not just by this person, but by the repeating pattern that you keep witnessing. Maybe you're out there dating and you want to spot these signs within the first few conversations to stop the cycle before you're invested. Or maybe you've been in a long-term relationship and you're watching the same frustrating dance happen for the 100th time, and you need a way to change the script for good. I'm Dr. Kate Balestrieri, a licensed psychologist, certified sex therapist, pact couples therapist, and the founder of Modern Intimacy, a sex therapy and couples therapy practice with providers across the country. And I'm not here today to teach you how to fix someone else, but rather I'm here to give you the clinical red flag language and communication tools to do one of two things. One, spot a person who avoids accountability before you get emotionally invested. Or two, disrupt that entrenched pattern that you might be in with a partner you've already committed to. So let's start by breaking down 10 of the most common subtle scripts of how people avoid accountability and, most importantly, how you can respond. So let's start with number 1. I'm sure you've heard this term, gaslighting. This is really about reality distortion, and it works by invoking the listening partner's mental state or past trauma in a way to invalidate their perception of a current event. And in this sense, it destabilizes their sense of reality. So an example of gaslighting might sound like, "No, you're not remembering that correctly. Your anxiety is making you paranoid about my loyalty." This kind of phrase induces a form of hypervigilance and cognitive dissonance, as the listener must choose between their own sensory data and their partner's imposed narrative. And so it systematically erodes self-trust, especially when used over and over again. Number 2 is comparative suffering, or what sometimes you might hear called the trauma Olympics. This is a form of deflection away from accountability that employs a hierarchy of hardship to negate a partner's present emotional experience. So that might sound something like, "How can you complain about my emotional unavailability when you know my father was never there for me?" So this approach enforces an emotional minimization and a self-silencing. You might learn that your pain is only legitimate if it surpasses the other person's, replicating dynamics of neglect that may or may not feel familiar. Number 3, semantic redirection, or a literal mindedness. So this works by using a hyperliteralism and an intellectualization to evade the emotional content of a complaint. The focus shifts from the affect to a forensic debate over facts. So that could sound something like, "You said I never listen, but that's wrong. I did listen to you on Tuesday, so your claim is false." This constitutes a form of emotional abandonment, and your need for attunement is met with a cold, analytical detachment, which can trigger a profound relational loneliness. Number 4, preemptive victimhood, or commonly known as DARVO. And DARVO stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. And this mechanism is a very specific manipulative sequence where the confronted person denies the behavior, attacks the accuser, and reverses the roles to position themselves as the victim in the exchange. So it might sound like this: "I didn't lie to you," deny. "You're so controlling for checking up on me," attack. "Now I'm the one who feels unsafe because you're always accusing me," reverse victim and offender. This punishes vulnerability and it reinforces learned helplessness in the initiator, who now is tasked with managing the other person's distress. Number 5, a non-specific apology, or kind of a global amends. This tends to look like offering an overgeneralized, self-deprecating apology that lacks any real behavioral specificity, and its aim is to elicit pity and to terminate the discussion rather than engage in a repair of any kind. So it could sound something like, Fine, I'm just a terrible partner. I mess everything up. I'm sorry I even exist. This weaponizes shame to induce a kind of caregiver guilt in the hurt partner, which puts them into kind of a parental or reassuring role, which abandons the repair process and any accountability on the other person's part. Number 6, good old-fashioned deflection or problem shifting. So this might look like redirecting the focus of the core issue, so the behavior you're bringing to someone's attention, to a secondary, less culpable or unrelated issue. So let's say, for example, someone is confronted about infidelity. So this could sound like them saying, "You're right, I have been really distracted. I need to focus more on my career." This generates a kind of psychological chaos and a reality confusion, which impairs the hurt partner's ability to maintain focus and to advocate for their needs. Number 7, a conditional acceptance or kind of a counterblame. This couches a pseudo-apology within a but statement that transfers culpability to the injured person, rendering the accountability conditional and void. So this might sound something like, "I'm sorry I yelled, but you know how to push my buttons." This is a form of covert aggression that induces identity shame, teaching the partner that the harm they experience is a result of their own speaking up or other inherent flaws. Number 8 is a moral self-licensing or a kind of virtue claiming. This appeals to one's abstract identity or values as irrefutable proof that a specific harmful behavior could not be meaningful, thus bypassing examination of the behavior itself. That might sound like someone saying, "I can't be capable of misogyny. I love women. I've even read books about feminism." So this kind of response demands that the partner prioritize ideology over lived experience, which is a profound form of invalidation, and it's particularly corrosive within marginalized communities. Number 9, temporal discounting. So this is a kind of invalidation of the pattern itself, and it works by framing a recurring relational pattern as an isolated historical event and then dismissing its significance to avoid addressing the underlying schema or pattern. So that could sound something like, "That was 6 months ago. Why are you bringing up ancient history? You just can't let things go." This approach denies the cumulative trauma that occurs in a recurring pattern and pathologizes the partner's need for safety, framing a healthy memory and pattern recognition as a personal failing. And number 10, I'm sure you've heard this word before, love bombing, or bypassing the repair with grandiosity, if we want to really understand what it's about. And love bombing is essentially, in this context, responding to a call for accountability with some kind of over-the-top affection, gift, or romantic gesture, which is intended to obliterate the need for repair through positive emotional flooding. So for example, after a betrayal, someone might arrive with some extravagant gifts, or they might plan an elaborate date or declare an overwhelming love while refusing to discuss the incident itself. And this conditions a kind of intermittent reinforcement, which creates a traumatic bond where love and affection are unpredictably linked to the absence of accountability and the suppression of grievances. Okay, so you might be wondering, Dr. Kate, that's all fine and good, but what am I supposed to do about it? Let me walk you through 5 evidence-based responses to someone's attempts to avoid accountability. So number 1, the first thing you can do is to make a process comment offering kind of a meta-communication. And what this does is shift the discourse from what you're talking about to how you're talking about it. So from content to process. And in doing so, you're going to name the defensive pattern being used without labeling the character of the person using it. So it might sound like, "I notice that when I express a hurt, the conversation often shifts to my past traumas instead of the current action. Can we stay focused on what happened last night?" Number 2, the impact intent dialectic. So in this kind of response, you're going to firmly hold up the distinction between intent and impact, refusing to engage in debates over the former, the intention, while centering the conversation on the reality of the latter. And that might sound something like, "Your intent may not have been to dismiss me. I get that and can accept it. However, the impact was that I felt really invisible and irrelevant, and I need us to address that impact. Number 3, set an intentional structural boundary. So that could look like setting a limit on the form of communication, not the topic. This creates a safer container for dialogue between you and the other person. So it might sound like, I'm willing to continue this conversation, but not if my feelings are characterized as attacks. I need us to agree to speak about each other's behaviors and not assign a global character judgment. Number 4, ask for some sort of behavioral specificity. And in making this request, you're moving repair from the abstract to the concrete by requesting precise acknowledgement and a future-oriented plan. So that could sound something like this. For me to feel repaired with, I need to hear you acknowledge the specific action you took that was hurtful. So for example, I spoke over you in front of our friends, and then identify what is your plan to practice active listening skills in future social settings so this doesn't happen again. And last, number 5, is to set up a contingent vulnerability intervention. So in other words, set up a really strategic self-protective practice where emotional openness and shared vulnerability are made contingent upon demonstrated, trustworthy, and accountable behavior. So that might sound something like this. When difficult conversations consistently end with you withdrawing for days, it teaches my nervous system that conflict leads to abandonment. Therefore, I'll be sharing less of my immediate fears with you until we can successfully navigate a smaller conflict with mutual respect and repair. My depth of sharing is directly linked to our shared capacity for listening and for repair. I hope this was helpful for you, and if you'd like additional support, there are a couple of options. You can download our Accountability and Repair Toolkit. It's down in the comments below and in the caption, and it can help you transform repetitive conflict into a path for secure connection. If you need additional support, feel free as always to reach out to our team and set up a consultation for individual or couples therapy. We're here to help support you.